One night back in high school, I was out with friends, a completely normal night. The friend who was driving us drove all the time. He knew his way around town perfectly, and so did I and another friend in the group because we moved to different neighborhoods and school started our lives and we went places almost every day at some point. That night at almost midnight, we cruised around the basic neighborhoods, burning time until we had to be home. Suddenly we were lost, not just a turn on the wrong street into a path or a cut into some random alleyway, but lost. We found ourselves on this suburban street that we had no idea existed before this. We recognized none of the houses or street signs or anything, which already didn't even make sense because we knew how to get everywhere and what the entire town looks like. We got to the end of the block thinking maybe we would recognize something, turn the corner and be on our way, but from then on it was this completely random neighborhood. The street we stuck to was kind of on a slope, so we were just driving down this little slope. There was no street lights. There was a very dim light on one of the curbs and a few houses that decorated porch lights, but they were of no help. We could only see the sidewalk in the front of the houses when we were cruising right past them. The sky was pitch dark with only the North Star and a couple stars in the distance. The blocks around the street didn't look familiar at all. The streets, including the streets' names, were completely random. The area didn't even fit the vibe of the town. It was almost liminal, like it was a design of a non-specific neighboring town, but with the same air as our town. We joked about being lost, but really we were laughing from being generally scared and screwed not knowing how we got to being here. You could have told us that we left town by accident, and I would believe it, even though it's extremely obvious when you leave my town because it requires taking the highway, a very specific long road leading to towns that are 30 minutes away, or going on one of the bridges that have multiple signs. Multiple times right after this happened, two of the friends and I, or I alone, went around town in the daytime and nighttime, taking various turns and streets, trying to uncover where we had gotten absolutely lost. I tried again as an adult, but I've never found it. I've never found any of the streets or the street lamps, or even the same slope. Did we somehow leave town on a little path, and we somehow didn't know? I was about 8 years old when this happened. My brother was 2 years older than me, and we were both friends with brothers of the same age from another family. He also had a significantly older brother, although he had a car and a license, so he was rarely ever around. We spent a lot of time out at their family farm growing up. This particular day, we were spending the night. My brother and his friend decided they wanted to stay downstairs in sleeping bags, while my buddy and I got the bedroom upstairs with the bunk beds. We stayed up well past midnight talking and laughing about nothing at all, just having fun, until the whispers and quiet laughter were cut off by another noise. I had heard it for a while, a couple minutes before saying anything, but when it refused to stop, I finally spoke up. "Do you hear that?" I asked my friend, practically cutting him off mid-sentence. "The footsteps," he replied. Confirmation that he had been hearing it too. Someone was walking up and down the hall just outside our bedroom door. We were the only ones on the top floor, and you could see the hallway was pitch black from the gap beneath the door. I asked if his older brother had maybe come home, knowing his room was the only other bedroom upstairs. My friend assured me he wasn't coming home that night. The footsteps continued. I decided to check it out, now wondering if it was our older brothers playing a prank on us. I quietly shifted over to the door, silently twisting the handle. I waited until the footsteps had passed the door, cracking it open just enough to see the blackness of whoever was out there, without them seeing me. I looked through the seam of the door in its frame. I saw an empty hallway. The footsteps stopped immediately. No one was there. There were no time nor place for anyone to hide. As my mind struggled for an explanation, I convinced myself it had to be my brother. I don't know how he managed to hide, but he'd had to be down that hall. This had to be a prank. My friend was hesitant to investigate further, but I told him I just wanted to peek into the living room to see if our brothers were there. If not, odds are that's who we heard in the hall. Besides, the direction of the stairs was in the opposite direction we had just last heard the footsteps. We'd be walking away from them. With him on board, we headed for the stairs. The staircase turned left at a 90-degree angle, maybe 5 steps to a small landing, then 10 to 12 more to the bottom. A small window let in some moonlight, but it faced away from the final descent. Once on the landing, we stared down into an increasingly dark stretch to the living room. I went first, slow but keeping a pace moving forward. I still had the idea that someone else was behind us upstairs. Nearing the bottom, my eyes struggled to adjust to the dark. My foot touched the last step. In that same instant, someone or something ran directly in front of me. I didn't see anything, but it was so close I felt the air rush past as it ran from left to right. That close I should have seen something, an outline, a figure, some sort of mass directly in front of me, but there was nothing. The shock, amplified by already being on high alert, was enough to send me stumbling backwards into my friend. We both fell back on the stairs, adrenaline at an all-time high. Whatever that was, I could feel its presence as it passed, like when someone is standing behind you. It was taller than me, although being a kid most people were at the time. He stayed still, silent, listening for whatever came next. Nothing. He had had enough. As he took a step up the stairs, I told him I was going to at least peek out into the living room. He made his way back to his room. As I grabbed the handrail the stairwell, without leaving the imaginary safety of the staircase, I leaned myself out into the living room. To my left, I saw my brother and his buddy still asleep in their sleeping bags. Whatever had run in front of us had been in there with them the whole time. Not taking that time to process this, I continued to scan the rest of the main floor. To the right was the kitchen with a fairly large window going out into the yard. I could see the driveway well lit from a nearby yard light. I froze. My grip tightened on the railing. Someone was walking down the driveway into the property. It was an older man, late 40s, maybe 50s. He wore coveralls with visible patches. His shoes looked old and very worn. A thin, dim-looking jacket also showed signs of stress, topped with an equally worn hat, an old style I had never seen someone wear before. He was carrying a large burlap sack over his shoulder. It too had a patch sewn to its side. All of this was overshadowed by the most bizarre detail of all. Everything about him, his clothes, hat, skin, and even the sack he was carrying, was a soft, glowing gray color. I stared as he walked down the driveway. My mind was empty. I simply couldn't process this. I was locked in a trance. I had seen a ghost. Bolted back upstairs, my friend already back in his bunk. I explained what I had seen, whether it was the look on my face or the tremble in my voice. I could see he had no problem believing me. Silence and tension replaced our previously light-hearted whispers and laughs. Somehow, we eventually fell asleep. The next morning, we didn't say anything. No one would believe it, especially coming from the younger brothers. Besides, I wasn't ready to have that conversation with anyone. We all sat in the living room watching TV before our day got started. Their mom entered the room behind us. This woman was one of the most nicest I've ever met. Patient and always wearing a genuine smile. This was the only time that smile was absent. She looked pale and extremely tired. Her eyes were dark with bags below them. She didn't look at any of us. She just stared past us across the room. Any of you guys see someone walking around last night? Her question seemed like it was meant for no one. We all stared. I was so caught off guard by her demeanor that I didn't even connect her question to the events the night before. We all just shook our heads, indicating we hadn't. Without another word, she turned around and went back into her room. Immediately after I realized what she had really asked and the pieces started to click, I never told her. I never told anyone. My friend and I didn't discuss it again for nearly 2 decades, and even the conversation was brief. All of this writing I still haven't told my brother. I didn't know it at the time, but this was my introduction into the paranormal. I would be followed by numerous events throughout my life that would open my mind to unbelievable possibilities, impossible things you only hear in stories or see in movies, things you don't talk about with most, but still live in the core of your mind, things that after nearly 3 decades still make my heart beat a little faster. I've tried to convince myself that I was just being paranoid that night, but the details still don't sit right with me. I worked the late shift at a warehouse and usually clock out around 11:15 p.m. The drive home takes about 20 minutes, mostly empty roads, and long stretches with barely any traffic. That night started like any other. I pulled out of the parking lot, and I noticed a dark sedan leave it a few seconds after me. I didn't think anything of it. A few other employees leave around the same time. About 5 minutes later into the drive, I switched lanes to pass a slow truck. The sedan switches lanes almost immediately after I did. That's when I first noticed it. Still, I told myself it was nothing. We were heading the same direction, but then I took an earlier right turn that I don't normally take. I honestly didn't even know why I did it. Maybe something in my gut made me curious. A few seconds later, the sedan turned too. That's when my stomach tightened. I kept driving and decided to test it without making it obvious. I made a left into a quiet residential area, then another right, then another left. None of these were on my normal route home. Each time the headlights behind me followed without hesitation, not speeding up, not falling back, just staying at the same steady distance. At that point, my heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. I couldn't see the driver clearly. The windows looked dark, and every time I tried to slow down slowly to get a better look, they adjusted their speed. I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going straight home. Instead of heading toward my neighborhood, I turned toward a 24-hour gas station about 10 minutes away. It's well lit and usually had at least one or two people around, even late at night. As soon as I pulled into the entrance, the sedan slowed down like it might follow me in, but it did not. It kept going straight past the station. I parked near the front doors under the brightest lights and sat there pretending to check my phone. My hands were shaking. I kept replaying the turns in my head, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence. Maybe they just lived nearby. Maybe they were just driving aimlessly like I was. About 5 minutes later, while I was just sitting there, I saw the same dark sedan drive slowly past the gas station again, but this time from the opposite direction. It didn't turn in, it didn't stop. It just rode by slowly, almost crawling, like whoever was inside was checking if I was still there. That's when the fear really hit me. They hadn't just continued on their way, they had turned around. I stayed parked there for another 15 minutes until a couple of other cars pulled in for gas. When I finally left, I took a completely different route home, one that loops around and adds an extra 10 minutes. I kept checking my mirrors the entire way, but the sedan never reappeared. I got home safely that night, but I never did sleep much. The next evening at work, I walked out to the parking lot and immediately scanned the area. I didn't see the sedan at first, and I felt stupid for even looking, but then as I was unlocking my car, I noticed a dark vehicle parked 2 rows over, same shape, same tinted windows. It could have been any car, I know that, but the moment I looked in its directions, the engine turned on, the headlights flicked up, and it pulled out of the parking spot. I didn't want to see where it went. I got into my car, locked the doors, and waited. The sedan drove off past my row slowly, not fast, not aggressively, just slow enough that I felt like they were looking at me. Then it exited the parking lot. I didn't drive straight home that night either. I waited until other coworkers left and followed behind a group of cars for a while before splitting off. I haven't seen that sedan since, at least now that I've noticed. But I changed my route completely after that. Different routes, different exit times. I even asked my manager if I could switch shifts, and eventually I did. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it really was a coincidence twice. But I can't ignore the fact that whoever was in that car turned around after I pulled into the gas station, and the next night they were sitting in my work parking lot. If I hadn't trusted my instincts that first night, I would have driven straight home, and that's the part that still keeps me up sometimes, wondering if they were trying to find out where I live. This happened about 8 months ago. I still think about it every time I drive late at night. I was coming back from a friend's place in another city, and it was already past 2 a.m., so the highway was basically empty except for the occasional truck. I actually like driving at the hour because it's quiet and there's no traffic stress. So I had music playing low and was just cruising along, not really thinking about anything. I remember I was on a long straight stretch of road with no street lights, just my headlights and darkness on both sides, when I noticed something far ahead in my lane. At first, I thought it was a road sign or maybe a cardboard box that fell off a truck, because it wasn't moving at all. But as I got closer, my headlights started to light it up more clearly, and I realized it wasn't an object. It was shaped like a person standing right in the middle of the highway. I immediately slowed down because obviously that didn't make any sense. There were no nearby cars or breaking down vehicles. Nothing that would explain why someone would just be standing there at that time of night. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt, like my brain was trying to warn me before I fully understood what I was seeing. The figure looked tall and thin, and it wasn't trying to wave me down or move out of the way. It was just standing there facing my direction, completely still. I remember thinking maybe it was someone drunk or injured, so I slowed almost to a stop about 20 or 30 feet away. My headlights were fully on now. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't reacting to the light at all. Most people would shut their eyes or step aside, but it didn't move even slightly. It just stood there. I leaned forward a little from my steering wheel trying to see its face, and I swear I couldn't make out any features. Not like it was dark, I mean it literally looked blank, like the light wasn't reflecting off a face at all. Right when I was trying to figure out what I was looking at, it still only took one slow step toward my car. Not a stumble, not a normal walk, just one deliberate step. That was enough for me. I didn't want to see anything else. I hit the gas and swerved around it. As I passed, I glanced to the side for half a second. There was nothing there. No person beside my window, no shadow behind me. nothing in the mirror when I checked. It was just an empty road again, like I had never been there. I actually pulled over about a minute later because my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't hold the steering wheel steadily. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to come up with a logical explanation, but nothing made sense. If it was a person, where did they go in those 2 seconds? There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, just flat roadside and open ground. I eventually convinced myself I was tired, and I imagined it, but the thing is, I wasn't sleepy at all before that moment. And what still bothers me the most, it wasn't that something was standing there. It's that whatever it was, it waited until I got close to move. In 2014, three friends and I decided to spontaneously drive out to the Mojave Desert and camp out there. There's a pit stop out there called Wells Well, which consists of a gas station and a fast food place. By the time we got there, it was probably 9 p.m. and dark. We drove out on a dirt road outside of the gas station about a half mile away. We gathered firewood and dried sticks and dug a fire hole into the ground and started a little campfire. Everything was going great. We had our soup by the fire warming up, and we had a BB gun that we're using to shoot cans that we found out there scattered around. We also had a blank handgun. Things changed after the fire randomly went out. It left in pitch blackness until we could get it lit again. All of a sudden, I heard something. The sound of a small rock landing and rolling a little across the desert ground, not far away. I put it in the back of my mind as something to pay attention to. Then, about 5 minutes later, I heard it again. It was a bit pitter patter of a small rock landing and rolling across the desert ground. This time I said something. Nobody else heard it. I said, "Pretty sure I just heard a rock landing near us." Didn't take long for another rock to fall. This time two of them heard it, then another rock. The intervals between were getting closer. We all were aware of it now, and the mood had shifted considerably. We were all now on high alert, aware that there was a presence out there with us. We all had the feeling like something was watching us, just outside of the fire light. It was uncomfortable. We decided to split up into two groups of two, not too far away, and to do a perimeter search with our flashlights. There was nothing but sparsely separated sagebrush out there, no taller than 5 feet at most. We scanned the area, and while scanning, I could hear rocks landing between our two groups. We checked behind bushes and lit up every area with our flashlights. There was nothing. These rocks didn't sound like they were being thrown from a distance. It sounded like they were being tossed at us from 15 feet away, though. We were looking around, and noticed the scrap metal that we were using as a backboard to shoot the cans didn't have the cans in front of them anymore. They had been piled up behind the scrap metal. There was no way a human being could be sneaking around us like that at night. We would have heard them and caught them with our flashlights. We regrouped by my car, which was next to the fire, trying to figure out what was going on and what we should do. All the while, the sound of a rock landing every 3 minutes. The sounds were getting more frequent and closer to us. We decided whatever this was didn't want us there, so we got in my car and drove back to the gas station. I immediately went inside and told the clerk about what happened to us. He basically said that side of the desert is haunted. There were Chinese miners back in the 19th century that died in the mines up in the hills about 5 miles away. I got back to my car and told the guys. We were all in shock and couldn't believe this actually happened to us. It was a surreal feeling, like the hair standing up on our necks. I wanted to go back, and most of us did, too, out of curiosity. We got back to the site. The fire was out. It was pitch black and quiet. We sort of loitered around waiting for something to happen. Then it did, but this time it was a lot more closer and frequent, like every minute, and the rocks were heavier. Two of us were standing next to the smoldering fire, and me and another friend were by a tall bush. We all felt like we were being tested by fate and challenging whatever this was. All of a sudden, what sounded like a fist-sized rock came over the bush we were standing next to and rolled by my friend's foot. We both looked at each other, and without a word, both went around opposite sides of the bush with our flashlights. Nothing. About this moment, the other two started yelling and were running back to my car, so we all started running back. They said a big rock landed in the embers. It was a mad rush, and we reversed out of there the whole way back to the gas station and slid to my car. The next day, we explored the mines in the hills the clerk told us about. It was legit. There were mines there, and we discovered an article about the mine collapsing on the Chinese workers.